This is the second in a series of podcasts on the subject of punctuation. Part 2, the apostrophe and the colon. Apostrophes do a number of different things. One of them, obviously enough, is that they indicate deletion or contraction. Cannot becomes can't, C-A-N apostrophe T. It is becomes its, I-T apostrophe S. And we refer to the class of '08 rather than the class of 2008, or for that matter, the class of 1908, depending on which century you're talking about. Generally speaking, neither journalistic nor academic writing uses a great many contractions, so you usually don't have to worry about it too much. However, do watch it, because apostrophes can sneak in where they're not supposed to. The second thing that the apostrophe does is mark possessives on nouns. Nouns that do not end in S add apostrophe S. So we have Elmira's home, Two Moose's antlers, Bush's decision. Notice that even though moose ends in the sound S, it doesn't end in the letter S, so it gets the apostrophe S. Nouns ending in the letter S just get an apostrophe. So we have Thomas's opinions, the Bush's holiday plans. And again, we have a peculiarity with the pronunciation here. Even though we do not add an S to the word Thomas, we pronounce the possessive as if it had two S's at the end. It's Thomas's opinions. However, we do not pronounce Bush's as if it had two S's at the end of it. It's the Bush's holiday plans, not the Bush's holiday plans. It may well be that in 30 or 40 years, it might become standard to add apostrophe S to all words, whether they end in S or not. There is some evidence, in fact, that things are tending that way towards greater regularization, but it hasn't happened yet. A common error in the use of the apostrophe is to put it on the possessive of a personal pronoun. It's, hers, theirs, your. No apostrophes on these. That's a pretty easy error to make for two reasons. First of all, as we've just seen, the apostrophe goes on the possessives of nouns. So we tend to think of the apostrophe as associated with possessives. The second reason is that we do see personal pronouns with apostrophes. That's when they appear in contractions. So when we see IT apostrophe S, we don't automatically get alarm bells going off in our head because that's a pretty common form. It just means it is. So you have to really double check. When you see IT apostrophe S, one way to remember is just to read it as if it were uncontracted. It is. Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, read as you are. T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, read as they are. Okay, on to the colon. The colon does a number of rather specialized things. For example, it separates hours and minutes when we're telling time, so that we write 3:45, for example. For our purposes here, however, we'll look at three things the colon does in prose writing. It introduces a list, it introduces an explanation, and it introduces a quotation that is long and or preceded by a full sentence. Colons introduce lists. Take a look at this example. The following students have received awards. Now notice that that part right there is a complete clause. It has a subject, the following students, a verb, have received, and a direct object, awards. We then have a colon, and then we have the names of the students who have received awards. Likewise, with your final paper, hand in the following items, colon. The following items is the direct object of the particle verb hand in. It's a verb plus the particle in. You could also read it as a verb with an adverbial unit in. But in any case, the following items is the direct object, and the material before the colon is a complete clause. And then we have the list of items that students are to hand in. If the items to be handed in are presented as the direct object of the verb hand in, you don't have a colon. You just lead right into your list. With your final paper, comma, hand in your works cited page, comma, bibliography, comma, audience analysis, comma, and rough draft. You will very occasionally see something like, with your final paper, hand in, colon. But in those cases, you will almost invariably see the items presented in a bulleted or numbered list vertically arranged under that introductory segment. The colon introduces an explanation. He pointed out a major problem with the Dubai deal, control of U.S. ports by a foreign power would disturb a citizenry already nervous about terrorism. What comes after the colon is the description of exactly what that major problem, referred to in the first half of the sentence, is. They have finally reached an agreement, What is that agreement? Well, that's the material after the colon. Participating organizations will be able to make use of a centralized database accessible by subscription. And the third thing the colon does is introduce a quotation when a full sentence precedes the quotation or when the quotation is long. This is what he had to say, and then the quotation. The report contains the following caveat, and then the quotation. Notice again that in each case, a full sentence precedes the quoted material. If you have something like, he said, and then the quoted material is in the position of the direct object of the verb of saying, you don't use a colon, you use a comma. Now, it is very unusual to put a comma between a verb and its direct object. In fact, it simply doesn't happen unless you have a really good reason to have a comma there for some other reason. Conventionally, before a quote, we use a comma after the verb of saying. In any event, the point here is you don't use a colon. You use a comma because the quote is in the position of the direct object of the verb of saying. Common errors with a colon. First of all, using a colon when the quoted material is in the direct object position. And secondly, using a colon where a semicolon is appropriate. It's easy to confuse semicolons and colons. We will talk about semicolons later. And that's the end of part 2.